The First Law of Magic, Chapter 1, Part 4. Once in the same living room, the aura of fear emanating from the princess would have been suffocating, had Twilight Velvet not spent the last 16 years of her life living in the presence of a pony with a similar, albeit lesser, effect of her own. The alicorn strode in purposefully, planting herself on the largest couch and indicating the chair across from her. Her powerful stride and calm features made her seem in charge even while in another's home. Once seated, the smaller mare smiled nervously, unused to such a forward pony who strode through her house like she owned the place.
"Pray tell, where are your husband and children?"
said Pony asked innocently.
"Oh, Nightlight was just having a nap. Work has been hard on him lately, and Twilight is upstairs in her room, reading I assume, and Shining Armor is at school."
The mare replied a little too quickly.
"Oh? I had thought school would be out by now."
The smaller mare gulped, and wiped a stray strand of great hair from her eyes.
"He had to stay late because..."
She paused, considering for a second lying. Ultimately, she decided on the truth, feeling guilty having even thought of lying to the princess.
"He was in a little trouble today."
The princess raised an eyebrow at that.
"What exactly happened?" "It's just a little disagreement with another cult. You know how boys can get."
The monarch didn't seem to notice or care for the other mare's nervousness.
"He is, what, 18 now, correct?" "Yes, last month of high school before he's off to basic,"
Twilight Velvet said with a hint of pride.
"I remember his application coming across my desk. Quite a bit of promise."
Though the praise was brief, Twilight Velvet cheered silently in her mind.
"Speaking of promise, how's your other child doing?"
The younger mare's eyes suddenly lost their luster that had come from hearing her son praised by the princess.
"Oh, fine, just fine."
She smiled, hoping it looked less fake than it felt.
That's very good to hear. How are her studies? I have heard that she's already graduated high school."
The alicorn's smile spoke of knowledge that made Twilight Velvet nervous.
"She got her GED over a year ago, and she's well into her second year of private lessons in magical theory."
Though there was pride in her voice, there was also fear, one born of worry that could only come from a parent worrying about their child. The alicorn nodded thoughtfully, smiling politely.
"Do you have any tea by chance? I'm afraid I'm parched."
The sudden shift jarred Velvet, and she quickly stood up.
"Oh, yes, of course, Your Highness. I'm afraid we only have honey tea, though. It's Twilight's favorite." "That sounds delicious, thank you."
The younger mare bowed once more, and dipped out of the room. Once alone, Celestia cast her eye around the room, analyzing every minute detail. The house was relatively small, given the size of the family, and it was built in that tall tower-like manner that had been fashionable around 50 years or so ago. That meant only the kitchen, living room, and bathroom were on the main floor. The second floor, Celestia knew, had the master bedroom, a second bathroom, and a small office. The third floor would have 2 bedrooms, with a small common area, and the fourth was an attic, probably only used for storage. The room she currently occupied was pleasant, and had a very lived-in vibe to it. Bookshelves lined one wall from floor to ceiling, wrapping all around a large window that gave a generous view of the street, while several potted plants, all fake, dotted the room at irregular intervals. The couch was comfortable but worn, and was probably as old as the house. The rest of the furniture seemed to carry this theme as well, everything bearing a distant age to it. Celestia then glanced briefly at the books that she could see from her spot on the couch. Nearly every single one that she glanced at was either a work of fiction or a book of spells or magic. Though most were mundane, she noticed one very different and probably illegal book that sat on the bottom shelf. Its spine faced the inside of the bookshelf, making it impossible to know what it contained had the distinct purple pages not given it away. Celestia frowned. She knew books made with such pages were almost always used to contain spells that were either banned or simply frowned upon. She made a note of it and moved on, noticing a faint whistle from the other room. A second later, she had to stop looking around as the sound of hooves approached from the kitchen. The steps were close together and erratic, indicating an undercurrent of nervousness that Celestia could sense a mile away. She looked up as the other mare entered the room.
"I am terribly sorry, Celestia, but it seems as though the tea has gone bad. I'm afraid I didn't notice it until after I had boiled the water."
Alarm bells sounded in the alicorn's head.
"The honey tea has gone bad?"
The princess arched an eyebrow that served only to make the other mare sweat.
"I am afraid so. It is dreadfully hard keeping food from going bad in this house. It's the damned old wood that they made this place out of."
The mare shook her head and sat back down across from the alicorn.
"Anyways, is there a reason that you were stopping by? I hope it wasn't just for a taste of my tea, or I'd feel dreadful."
She forced a small laugh.
"No. I was actually hoping to extend an invitation for your daughter to join my school. May I meet her?"
Celestia asked.
Oh, of course.
The small mare said quickly. Both mares were suddenly distracted by the sound of hooves descending the stairs. Both of them turned to see a quite surprised stallion standing on the landing and looking at them. He blinked twice, and dropped quickly into a deep bow.
Oh, greetings, Your Highness.
The alicorn smiled.
Please rise. Sorry to wake you.
The stallion rose and waved a hoof dismissively.
Oh, no, don't worry. I just heard the sound of tea as I was lying awake in bed.
He walked over and placed a gentle kiss on his wife's cheek.
Is there any left for me by chance?
With the two of them so close, the startling age difference became readily apparent, making Celestia narrow her eyes in thought.
Weren't they supposed to be the same age? Possibly 1 or 2 years apart, but this Twilight Velvet appears to be 10 years the stallion's senior. I'm afraid the last of the tea went bad. Sorry, honey.
The stallion frowned deeply at that, and he glanced upwards for a moment before catching himself and looking back down, a sudden look of guilt on his wife's face.
Your name is Nightlight, correct?
Celestia interjected. The stallion looked away from his wife and towards the alicorn.
Oh, yes. My apologies for not introducing myself, Your Highness. Pardon my bluntness, but how old are you and your wife?
Velvet's face fell, avoiding eye contact. Her husband's eyes suddenly seemed to fill with an intense disdain.
We are both 42, or at least we should be the same age if it wasn't for it. Dear, please.
The mare placed a hoof on her husband's, and gave him a pained smile. After a second, he withered and let out a breath. Celestia dismissed the entire interaction, having learned all she needed.
May I please see your daughter now?
Velvet stood up suddenly.
Ah, yes, of course.
She then turned to her husband.
Why don't you go buy some more tea and pick up Shining? I'm sure that he'll be out of detention by then.
The stallion stood his ground for only a moment before turning towards the door.
Yes, dear.
He turned once, before reaching the door and shot Celestia a strange, almost pleading look. And then he was gone. Velvet coughed and moved towards the stairs.
I will go and get her now, Your Highness. Please, make yourself at home.
The alicorn merely nodded, remaining seated. The smaller mare quickly stood and disappeared up the stairs, leaving Celestia to her thoughts. The alicorn's nose perked up to a nearly unnoticeable smell, one that seemed hidden behind the smell of the home. Sniffing a few more times, Celestia stopped suddenly. Her muzzle then scrunched up in disgust, her fears realized. Beneath the smell of books and home cooking, there was the distinct smell of death. She didn't have long to ruminate on this information, as her host came back down the stairs, another much younger, taller mare clinging to her side. The second pony had to be Twilight Sparkle. However, she was much too tall for a mare of 16. She was standing nearly a whole head over her mother, with sharp angular features accentuated by a long spiraling horn. But where her mother was slightly round, Twilight Sparkle was painfully skinny, skin stretched tightly over her skeleton that seemed to be trying to escape the hold her flesh had on it. Deep bags hung under her eyes, giving the mare a haunting gaze, and a plain black dress that seemed one size too small covered the mare's cutie mark, and draped a few inches down her legs before coming to an abrupt stop. Her lips were drawn tight, and she stared worriedly at the alicorn the entire time that she approached. Her legs were long and would have been shapely and enchanting had it not been for how painfully skinny that they looked. And last was her hair. Purple fur so dark it was nearly black covering her body. A short, neatly cut mane and tail covered the rest of her body, and her hair was a deep blue with an equally deep magenta and pink highlight running through them. Though Celestia was unaffected by it, she could still feel the powerful aura of fear that the mare emitted.
Hello, Twilight Sparkle. I've heard so much about you,
Celestia said with a smile. Instead of returning to her seat, Velvet stood beside her daughter, shifting nervously as she watched the interaction.
I'll get things, I hope.
The youngest mare said without humor, in a voice 2 tones deeper than what Celestia would have guessed from a mare her age.
But of course, which is why I am here to invite you to study at my school. Now.
The mare replied instantly. Celestia pretended to be surprised.
Wait, why do you say that? You've hardly gave it any thought.
The mare looked down.
I frighten ponies. Besides, I don't want to abandon my current studies.
Celestia frowned.
You do know that we could work something more private for you if you'd like. I have a tower without an occupant that would suit you perfectly, plenty of books, and even a world-class telescope that would be all yours, and plenty far away from any pony who might bother you.
Celestia leaned in and smiled.
Why? I even have a vacant position for a personal pupil that I think you might be able to fill in quite nicely.
The lanky teen frowned and seemed to think about it.
Give it some thought and send your response to the castle tomorrow. I find that sleeping on an important decision is helpful. Fine. No, dear, don't be like that. This might be a wonderful opportunity, think of it. Your own place to stay, plenty of books, and the princess as your teacher.
Velvet said, bumping her daughter with a hip, which did nothing to extract the mare from her funk.
I'll think about it.
The younger unicorn replied.
That's all I can ask. Thank you.
Celestia beckoned with a hoof to the two chairs across from her.
Please, sit.
The two mares reluctantly did as asked and made their way over. I can't tell if Twilight's acting all strange because of her nervous system, or maybe just a lack of food for the skinniness, although it's probably just the nervous system. Anywho, let's get on to our very confident donators. Top donators: TacoCat598, Peter Coulthard, J Tinman, Darkside, Gauntlet, and Only One Thing. Zar630, Strix, Raiden, Narwhals, Black Moonheart, Drake Lovedragon, Pastel Skies, Dospo, Madman Stan, Delta Omega, Jack Hadge, RuneScyther9852, Hunter Norman, Dash of Evergreen, Riny Dragonwolf, Ponyman, Tall Rasha, The Toilet Snake, Sword Brother and Mordred, Ronin Wandering, Random Person Man Guy, Easy, Sky Ochia, Leslie Prickett, Jordan Peterson, Crimson Kitten A9, Lightskin, Monster Kitty, Tim Bob, Starlight Glimmer, Lightning Blitz, Squiddy Boy, David E. Sanchez, Soul Dragon, Gaggy, Trey, Shadow Drake, Dak Britton, Joe Piercy, Hunter Mara, Alex F., Rainbow Dash, Teal'c Anderson, TV Killer, John Becker, Leon Reynolds, Raven Speedster, Zach Rakau, Mystery CU, Edgar Garcia, One Kingdom 1, Nissa Rusan, Vazuri, Dyslexic Character Sheets, Hodrick Plencart, A Crazy Person, Ponyman365, Neapolitan, 6 of 9, Shyfire, Stamp, and Down Baseri. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and live life to the fullest.